All right, we're ready to go. So it's 12 minutes.
All right, you got it. Yeah, I got a face for radio. We're good. Good to know I'm on camera.
Yeah, really. He is always in style. We're so glad that you've joined us today. I'll tell you what, we're facing a lot of challenges in, the nation right now, but there are a lot of good things going on, and I just love talking about those good things. And you can catch Good News with Larry Powell. That's nothing but good news stories, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. right here on 1550 a.m. KXEX. You can also catch it on Spotify. And I love what happens with Spotify because you choose when to listen to it. You're not stuck with just 4 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 10 o'clock or 4 o'clock, whatever. Listen, we're so glad you're with us today, and we've got a really special guest, good friend of mine, but I wanted to remind you, we're on Saturdays at 4, Sundays at 6. We talk politics, education, religion, technology, sports, values, and healthy communities, and just about anything you can imagine that will make for a better place to live. But today I've got a really good friend of mine, a good special friend that is involved in education. We've been in education a long time. We've served as superintendents at the same time, but Dr. Bob Nelson, and I'm going to just call him Bob because Bob's my friend. Yeah. But superintendent of Fresno Unified School District, over 70,000 kids. And was it fourth or fifth largest?
Third, actually.
Third now.
Yeah, we're above Long Beach. So LA, San Diego, and us, yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic.
I guess.
Yeah.
You can debate whether that's fantastic, but yeah, we are third biggest. So LA, San Diego, Fresno, and then Long Beach are the top four.
Man. When I was in Fresno Unified for 16 years.
Right.
And absolutely love the district, and I've got 3 grandkids there now.
Wow, we're thankful.
Yeah. Listen, I tell my friends, I said, I am so glad you chose to keep your kids in public school. That's about $19,000 a year, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's right. Very good. Yeah.
But, I'm so pleased with what's going on. We're going to talk school, but I want to talk about a couple of other things that are just kind of fun. You play the ukulele. I play the guitar and piano.
I do. I got a scholarship actually there. Yeah, I don't know if you know that, but I got a voice performance scholarship. That's how I ended up at USC. I don't want to take off. I don't want to make Guillermo mad by talking about USC too early, but I got a music scholarship, which is kind of ironic. You can tell I didn't parlay that into anything significant in my life, but yeah, one of the things I play the guitar a little bit too, but playing the ukulele, it's something really simple. And it's funny, I got a lot of kids, and none of my biological kids could carry a tune to save their soul. So I adopted this one little girl who's a really good singer, and so we sing and play the ukulele and put up videos, and it's a little crazy. Yeah. And it makes the haters have kittens. They don't know what to do with you if you play the ukulele. But
performance music is one of those things that gets to the heart and the soul of someone, and just connects. When I was principal at Kings Canyon Middle School,
go Grizzlies!
Go Grizzlies! Every kid had to take a quarter of music. So we set up a wheel there. Yeah. So every kid was involved in that because I just know how powerful it is for a kid. And it reduces a lot of anger and bullying and other kinds of things just with music.
For sure. I think, what I know, which is that you want to try and find a hook for every kid. But one of the things about the arts in totality is just good for kids 8 ways from Sunday, right? Fantastic. It's every bit as important as literature or mathematics, right? Just having access to music or visual art, performing art. Oh, yeah, we're talking about your granddaughter singing the lead. And, you can't put a price on kids having experiences like that and being connected.
Can't. Yeah. And those are lifelong memories that are there, And speaking of acting, superintendents have to be pretty good actors.
It's a little bit of a performance art. You can debate whether how I will say, it's one of the more, as you know well, it's one of the more volatile jobs that exists in the world. It's pretty political. And what's crazy is now I'm one of the longer tenured major urban superintendents up and down the state at 5 years, which doesn't say anything about me and everything about the volatility of the job.
But it does say a lot about you, Bob. That's you've hung in there.
Yeah, that's right. Dude is a survivor. Yeah, kind of like Rocky Marciano can take the hits and keep coming forward.
Well,
I guess.
And it is a challenge. I was in education for 43 years.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And so I left
a huge legacy, which is why I would come to stuff like this. Because, you're a force for good in the valley.
I appreciate that.
Nothing I say is going to be as strong as the bumper music that started this segment right there, though. That was awesome.
Mark Lowry, that's his music, and nothing stays the same. Excuse me, everything stays the same, but most of the time when they say that, it's kind of like, everything's always the same, Well, God's love and faithfulness is really
that is
very positive.
True.
But I love upbeat music. I got to play in Good Company Players. I was on 12 Angry Men.
Seriously,
and I was juror number 11, and I had to speak with an accent. It was my first time as an American citizen on a jury. I didn't get any of the jokes, and for me, I laugh all the time, so I had to be straight-faced for 2 hours. It was almost impossible.
That's so cool that you're involved in that. Like, you are a busy man. I don't know how you have time to perform in the Good Company Players, but that's awesome.
It was really fun. We had a good time with that, but a lot of really good things are taking place. But, one of the things that people don't know about Fresno Unified is it is a heavy poverty district.
It is. It's actually by free and reduced lunch count, it's actually the second most impoverished district in the nation, and by far and away the most impoverished in California. And it's a little bit different brand of California. There are some zip codes in our district that actually have a median family income of $10,000 a year. Wow. I don't know how you live in California on $10,000 a year, but there's a number of them like that. And even for us, like 45% of our families of four make a living wage of $25,000 a year or less. So it's, that's hard, because generally speaking, those same kids that struggle in a situation of poverty, they've not had access to early learning. And some people are like, why are their kids are falling behind? Sure. Well, they're not really falling behind. They were never caught up to start with. Yeah. So how do you encourage families to get their kids involved in early learning and to do it as early as they possibly can to give them the best possible chance of success?
Well, and that leads to what's happened over COVID.
Yeah.
In the last 2 years, if you take kids that have deficits to start with, and then you put them into this kind of craziness we've been in for 2 years.
Yeah, it's been awful for kids. There's no two ways about it. Yeah. And nobody would ever try to sell you a bill of goods that being remote with kids. I mean, for some kids it works, but for the vast majority of kids, nobody would ever sell you that that's as good as being with their teacher each and every day and having connection with the kids and being able to interact with one another. Yeah, there's no way to equate those the same.
I'll bet you have favorite teachers you had.
Oh, heck yes.
Yes, because I know I've got them.
Well, and that's, I think almost every educator you talk to can point back in their history to somebody that they really were shaped by or had a really big, powerful impact on their lives. A coach or a teacher or some significant person of import in their life.
And it's hard to get that through the screen,
It is.
And I tell you what, I give teachers so much credit for doing everything they could to make that a viable alternative.
Well, I would agree with that, right? I don't think anybody's like, if your perceptions as teachers didn't work really hard in the pandemic, I don't think you have a very clear eye as to how that actually went down, right? Teachers were crushing it for the most part.
They were.
And just trying to do everything they could. It's really hard to teach, like in secondary, I think of all those teachers that were teaching when the kid didn't have their camera on, you're teaching all these kind of like dark screens, like that would be just, horrific in many ways. But they did it and they showed up every day and they tried to make that happen for and behalf of kids. And so we'll do everything we can to keep our schools open. I mean, everything we need to do to keep our schools open, we're willing to do it now because there's really no secondary, no replacement for it.
And one thing you've done is you've gotten computers to your kids.
What's crazy is in March of 2020, when this whole thing went down, like we were not a one-to-one technology district at all. So we actually put 80,000 devices out on the street. And some of the things we've done too is, and you could debate whether we should be even in this business, but like in some parts of town, in some of those same areas that I was talking about before, like they don't have Wi-Fi access.
No, exactly.
And there's not cell towers that are active there and people don't have access to that. So we're actually establishing like an LTE network. So if you're a Fresno Unified student and you have a Fresno Unified device, you go on at your local school, that is a cell tower. You access internet there. I mean, I don't know, good, bad, or otherwise, those are kind of things I like to see my tax dollars going to, is making sure kids have access to the internet. Because now it's hard to function if you don't have access to the internet.
You're left out.
Right.
You're absolutely left out.
Right.
And it's crazy. I know the county office, we did a lot of stuff trying to get internet to the communities out in
rural Fresno County for sure, man. I think about the kids on the west side of the valley or, in the middle San Joaquin or, it's hard. I mean, and it's never been more important than it has been right now. I mean, people say this and not to be maudlin about it, but they're like, Wi-Fi access is kind of like the civil right of 2022, right? I mean, people need that in order to function.
Well, before Fresno Unified, you were where?
There wasn't. Yeah, I was. So Chwanakee was the only time I was not Fresno Unified. Unified. I came up through Fresno Unified. I taught at Burroughs and Susan B. Anthony, and I was a vice principal.
Walker.
Oh yeah, taught with Bill Walker, Jim Newton, some old time.
Jim Newton, the great guy.
God bless him, right? And so then I was a vice principal at Powers, Ginsburg, and Adams, and principal at Thomas. And then I went to HR, and I left the district. Which I don't regret at all. That was one of the best things I actually did, was leaving the district and coming back, because I think lifers in a district, you kind of don't realize that there are other ways that education happens and is made meaningful. So I went to a small town district in Madera County, which was really good. A 1,200 student district is very different, but just a different set of political values. I was really well treated by the board there and got 3 years under my belt as a superintendent there. Came back to Fresno as the chief of staff, and I've been the superintendent now, ironically, like 5 years.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it went by in a
But when you were at Chewoniki, you established almost a statewide reputation for computers and for technology.
Yeah, Minarets High was doing a lot of really robust things for technology.
Yeah.
And that was a really good time in my history. And I had the one thing that's really different in a small district is, man, you say something and you just set policy and the ship turns immediately. Fresno Unified, like, you have a group, then you bring people together, and then you have a community forum, and then things just don't turn like that. Yeah. But man, you got to be careful in like a Chewoniki, because you're just making conversation and you accidentally set policy without realizing you were
Hey, I remember I had a fantastic executive assistant, and I just made a comment one day when I was county soup, and all of a sudden they were doing it.
Right.
It was just a comment.
Right. So I was just making conversation.
Yeah. Well, listen, folks, we're sure glad that you've joined us. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. More with Dr. Bob Nelson, Superintendent, Fresno Unified. Be right back.
You're listening to Powell to the People. Write it down.
This is good. This is inspiring. You're a good mentor, so I can learn. Like, okay, there's a lot you can do after.
Hey, Facebook fans, we're really glad you're with us. This is a special time because Bob is so busy, and yet he took time to be with us today. So I'm going to ask him some questions that, and let me tell you, I know what he's going through. I know the challenges that he faces, and I know the heart that he has for kids. So we're going to talk about some things that I think are really unique happening in Fresno Unified. He is always in style. Bob, one of the things we've been talking about is a little bit of history and things, but one of the things I'd love to see happen, and education is a great forum for it, is that anybody who comes before the board and all board members and things, to talk to each other, even if you have really serious disagreements about things, but talk to each other in a civil manner. So we've lost some of that.
Well, quite honestly, that's the one thing you and I share equally in common. One of the things about being a major urban superintendent is there's an opportunity to lobby at the state level. If I wanted to be in Washington or Sacramento, there'd be the opportunity to do that.
Yep.
It's not what speaks to my interests. It's not what I value. But what I have done is this seal of civic engagement. Exactly what you're talking about. Like, how do you get kids to be able to? I mean, it was really hard because I went to Sacramento and said, hey, what we want to do is make sure we teach our kids that even you can agree in an agreeable way, right? You can disagree in an agreeable way, right?
Yeah.
Even if I'm on the extremes of belief or whatever, like I can find a way to do that in a way that keeps the dignity of people intact. And the message was, there's not a desire right now to work across the aisle in that way. And it was all I could do to not use vulgarity like immediately in the halls of the State House to say, then what are we doing? Like, I cannot raise a generation of kids that go forward with the message that I have to destroy people who don't see the world through the same eyes as us.
No, exactly.
Like, it's just not productive for anybody. And I mean, you see it. If it doesn't go well, then that's bad for our entire community. That level of chaos is not good for anyone.
No, it isn't. I learned an incredible lesson from my mother, who is 97 years old.
That's awesome.
She still speaks in public. She still drives a car.
Very good.
Absolutely amazing. But my brother was on the outskirts of civility at one point in his life, had some issues with drugs and other kinds of things. Well, I had real long hair at a time that conservative families didn't like that.
Right.
And she put a picture of Einstein on the mirror in the bathroom and had us under it said, it's not the style that counts, it's what's under it. And she had this amazing ability for civility. And so I learned very early on that you treat everybody, whether you agree, disagree, you treat them with civility. And I think I mentioned to you before we even started the show today, there are some people that I can't stand, but they don't know it.
Well, and the reality is, like, it's the conversation we were having. Like, I've made the choice to be kind.
Yeah.
I didn't make that choice to be kind because it's a source of weakness for me. It's actually a source of personal accountability and my responsibility.
Yeah.
I don't really care who you are and how you act.
Yeah.
I'm going to behave in a certain way that I think God wants me to behave. And my mother, to your point about mothers, my mother raised me to act in a certain way.
Yeah.
And part of me, and this sounds maybe negative, but the passive aggressive part of me kind of wants to win that. Like, I'm not going to get taken out of my game on that.
No,
right? Like,
exactly.
I'm going to strike, and I use this hashtag of militant positivity and I kind of have to convince myself of that. Like, there are bad things that happen, and there has been a ton of difficult things that have happened since the pandemic came in, right?
Yes.
You can orient to that in whatever way you see fit. But the bottom line is, like, I'm going to wake up tomorrow, and there'll be days I took my hits. I'm going to look myself in the mirror and say, did you do the best thing you could for kids? And I'm going to wake up the next day in the morning, and I'm going to keep going after it. And I'm not going to be recriminatory, and I'm not going to go after the people, because fundamentally, I don't need that in my life. I got enough stuff to do without carrying all those burdens.
Life is hard enough, no doubt about it.
Yeah, it can't be a source of your own drama.
Yeah, and I've always told people that other people's behavior doesn't determine how I act.
Exactly right.
And I love those lessons that we did with kids.
That is true knowledge, is to realize that you are not a tool for reaction.
No,
like, you
exactly.
are the author and finisher of your own journey, right?
No, absolutely.
That's really, really big.
Well, and I spent 16 years in Fresno Unified, so I love the district. I got 3 grandkids there now.
We're thankful that you entrust them to us. That's awesome.
And I got to tell you, they're doing some great stuff at Powers Ginsburg, which is in the middle of the city, and and it's in an
Ashland
area.
and Palm.
Yeah, it's in an area that has some struggles, but also has Fig Garden and things like that. But Mrs. Zamora, who is Daniel's teacher, and Mrs. Greer, who is AJ's teacher, they love those teachers. My grandkids, Daniel and AJ, just love. They come out every day. I pick them up twice a week, and they come out and they talk about Mrs. Zamora and they talk about Mrs. Greer, and they're doing some amazing things. And I'll tell you what, my grandkids wear masks, and they never, ever chafe about it. They never worry about it. They just get in and do it.
It's very politicized, but I will say it's more of an adult issue than it is a kid's issue.
Yeah.
If I'm totally honest about it, like, you just don't get a lot of chipping away from kids on that.
No, absolutely.
I don't love what's happened in terms of, like, differentiating schools from the totality of what we're trying to do in California. That bothers me no end.
Yep.
But the reality of it is, it's not ever really been a significant kid problem.
No, exactly.
And I'm with you. The single greatest thing about being the superintendent of Fresno Unified is having come up on the inside. It's like every time you go to a school site, it's kind of like high school reunion, right?
Yes.
And I was the VP at Powers Ginsburg, so I know that place where your grandkids are at implicitly. I guess son was Pastor Quadriplegic Cerebral Palsy, who was in the medical therapy unit there, and just loving. And one thing Powers Ginsburg does that other places don't do is they mainstream orthopedically impaired kids into the regular curricula. Right? There's nothing better than having that inclusive opportunity for kids with exceptionality, and who really benefits are the general education kids who have the opportunity to learn that you don't have to look like me, and things can still be okay. It's a beautiful, beautiful setting.
Well, when I was principal at Kings Canyon Middle School, we had 12 kids that used lights on their head to hit the computer to talk, and I mean, in wheelchairs, couldn't move. We had some really tough gang kids out in that area at the time. And you know what I did? I made one of those gang kids responsible for each one of those kids in a wheelchair to get them from class to class. And several of those kids became workers in convalescent hospitals and other. Their empathy factor just shot straight up.
There's nothing better than that personal touch that comes from being able to support another person in that way, right?
Yeah.
I think, and just giving kids the opportunity, and it's hard in Fresno. I think, I love what you're doing, and you're extolling the values of the Valley and what's really good here. But even our best and brightest, if you don't go to Fresno State, you're going to leave the Valley. So one of the things we have to do from a civics perspective is I got to get you to love the Valley and serve people here so that there's a shot you'll come back. Because my oldest kid is gone. Like, he went to college. He's probably not coming back anytime soon. What can I do to nurture kids' opportunities to serve in the Valley, love its people, and come back and serve here?
We got to get more boomerangs.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. We are, until we had the California Health Sciences campus, if you wanted to be a physician, you're leaving our community.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do we get you back? We got to get you to love the Valley and to return to the Valley.
Yep. And you know what? Community Medical Centers has the best neurosurgery center in California.
It's amazing.
San Francisco, University of San Francisco is there. My wife had an aneurysm, 5 years ago, and they had just opened for 3 months, and she got in, during that time. The care was phenomenal. There were 12 surgeons. There were 12 doctors that they team together and talk about things. I mean, it was amazing. So
it's incredible.
We're very blessed.
People don't know what a phenomenal educator your wife was too. Led a journey just supporting Southeast Asian students in their earliest days when they came here in repatriation from Laos, and so you have a long time history of paying it forward for kids in the Valley.
Yeah, thank you. Her book that she's just done is the Sunday Van Club.
Yep.
And we had her on a couple of weeks ago, and 9 Hmong girls. For 20 years, she's mentored them from 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. Now they're 28, 29, and 30. We still meet with them on a regular basis. 2 of them are teachers and absolutely master teachers. One of them's at Viking school right now. It's amazing what they're doing. And they grew up with a model watching Dot. She picked them up every Sunday and drove around for an hour and a half to get them, and then took them to church, took them to high tea, took them to plays, did all kinds of things to help them see what the American life was all about. And they love America. They love America.
Well, and that's exactly, Dot's a brilliant example of a adult who took responsibility for you and care for you in your life. We've adopted kids just like you guys have too. And our philosophy is that families are not born necessarily. They're made of whatever you choose to create out of that, right?
No, exactly.
Anybody that you're willing to kind of support and sustain in a time of need, that constitutes your family. And so that's a great model for, and there's a ton of kids who have a high degree of need that exists in our community right now. So just empower all of your listeners within the sound of your voice to, if you want to do something really meaningful and you're wondering about how you could be happier in your life, go find a kid that you can mentor and support, and you will find happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how do mentors and volunteers now work with the COVID thing in Fresno Unified?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. Not only do we have virtual mentoring, which again is probably not the most optimal. We are having situations now where mentors are back in space with their kids. We have a mentoring office through the Department of Prevention and Intervention. My good friend Darren runs that. And
Darren's a good guy.
Yeah, he'd be a great one to have on.
Yeah.
A new author as well, wrote a book about and loves God and loves people and as a good family man. But he'd be one to talk to if people wanted to find a way to mentor. So you could connect. There's a lot of different ways, different types of mentoring that people can do in all different age ranges too. We have a high degree of need for responsible, capable adults in our system that are willing to pay it forward for the kids. So you can call the Department of Prevention and Intervention and just ask for the mentoring office, and they'll hook you up if that's really something that you desire to do. We'd love to have you. And we desperately need good people with, good values being in regular space with our kids.
I tell everybody who says they're going to mentor, commit and stay for a period of time, because a lot of our kids have had adults in their lives that have not stayed with them. And so if you're going to be a mentor, give me 6 months, give me a year, put some time in to it and understand you need to be there.
Right. I would add that. And I would say it's not all going to be like Big Brothers, Big Sisters where you're going for ice cream all the time. Right. I would say you want to dig into the lives of the kids that you're serving and just be present for it, good or bad. Another one, too, I work with Wilma Hashimoto a lot and the good people of the court-appointed special advocates and that important work to support foster youth across our community. There's lots of ways or go rock babies in the NICU at Valley Children's, right? If you want to serve in the Valley, there are a lot of ways to be able to help kids in meaningful opportunities. There's just a lot of ways to serve, and a lot of can we just be honest? The Valley tree don't fork much, right? It's the same people doing the same work.
Oh, absolutely.
And so just getting in touch with other people that are putting it forward for and on behalf of kids is really meaningful. And there's a whole community of work people doing that.
Absolutely. Just think if we could double the 20% to 40, it would be pretty amazing.
And think about what the benefit would be for the kids that we serve. And that is what changes generational poverty. It is education. Don't get me wrong. That's not lost. I have probably as big a role in that as anybody in our system, but those relationships, you can't have the educational piece without the relationships.
No, exactly.
And the relationships are less valuable unless it's used to move education too.
Yeah. Well, you're listening to Powell to the People. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us. We have Dr. Bob Nelson from Fresno Unified with us. We're going to continue the conversation.
You're listening to Powell to the People. Write it down. People on the best talk in town.
Hey, we're so glad you're with us. Powell to the People, where civility is always in style. One of the things we're going to do, Bob, is on this show, we're going to talk to people. We're not going to yell at them. We're not going to do all the
That's appreciated. That'll really put you on an island in 2022. That will give a high degree of distinction to this program.
And, we have some folks on that I don't agree with, but we have to show our kids you can get along with people that you don't agree with, and that our society is made up of people that don't agree with each other.
And that's the true American set of values, which is that I don't have to agree. I value your opinion I value your ability to have an opinion, which differs from mine.
Yes.
Right. And to be able to have a forum and a opportunity to kind of learn from you. How do you grow if you don't listen to people who don't see the world through the same set of lenses that you see them.
I had a fantastic father. He's no longer with us, but great guy. But he always said, listen to other people because they may point out something you hadn't thought of.
Exactly right.
And boy, I love that kind of thing. And he worked at Swift & Company, so he was superintendent of Swift & Company, and he worked with turkeys.
There you go.
So I said, well, I did too.
There's some parallels there I think I'm not going to touch in the interest of civility.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But I'll tell you what, Swift & Company out on East Street in California,
cool.
he put a lot of kids through college, and all you had to do was have 26,000 turkeys a day coming through there from the time they're live until 1 inch thick frozen.
Oh, my word.
And I was putting them up on shackles and tucking that butterball look. And one every fourth bird. I wanted to go to college more than anything.
I imagine that's probably true.
And we all made it through college as a result. So Dad knew what he was doing.
One of the things we do too is in my religious foundation, we actually have a vineyard that we do Thompson seedless grapes that turns into raisins. And it didn't take my kids long being out in the field picking grapes to turn into raisins to realize, school is something I think is really important. This is hard work.
It is tough work.
Give it up for the people that do that for and on behalf of us every day. That is very, very hard work.
Well, I know, and we're both really strong on kids going to college, but we also have other pathways that are available for kids. So what are some of the things Fresno Unified is doing?
So super excited about that. Actually, when I came back as a chief of staff, one of the responsibilities I had was career technical education. So pleased to say that that's moving forward at a very, very brisk pace. If you've ever seen it, we're the logistics capital of California, and we should be given our just centralized role and everything. So you have at Duncan a heavy truck facility, and so our kids can actually graduate from Duncan with a certification in repairing heavy truck. And Fresno Truck Center, down just off of 99, they run 3 8-hour shifts a day. It's literally triage, kind of like a hospital, right?
Exactly.
And so those kids can get out. And it's not about providing a trajectory of kids. If you want to make $80,000 a year as a mechanic, that is a very good living and a good way to start your career. Yep. If you want to do that and not accrue college debt while you study to be an electrical engineer, fine with that too. I'm not giving you a set of values, but I am giving you some resources and tools to use. Fresno High just opened a brand new HVAC facility. It also is doing video editing, media production, construction pathway. And so, I have a kid at home who I'm fairly sure, his spatial reasoning and his ability to put stuff together, even with blocks and Legos and stuff as a little kid, that's his jam. That's his intelligence. Absolutely. And I'm sure he will do something productive with the use of his hands because that's what he really wants to do and what seems to match best with his value system, right? And so if he doesn't go to college, but he has, and I learned with my oldest one too. I had the first one that, he was kind of a silver spoon kid. Everything came easily. But college has not been great for him. And I'm kind of like, oh, great. Always like the superintendent's kid would be, of course, the one that doesn't get the collegiate degree, right? It's like the shoemaker's kid has no footwear.
No shoes.
But I listened to my kid. He was running an AT&T phone outlet. And I listened to him on the phone talking to one of his older clients and just nurturing and caring and loving. And I thought, why am I judging your journey? If you treat people in that way, like you've learned every key message I needed to teach you, right? You're good and we're fine. And me judging you through some lens, like you just realize there's a lot of pathways for kids to be successful. The key thing, though, is making sure that they're resilient and they just don't hang it up. No,
exactly. And keep one foot in front of the other.
Keep moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to tell people this story. My refrigerator went out, and so I called a guy in. He came to repair it, and he was there about 3 minutes, and he said, that'll be $100. And I said, well, how much for the part? And he said, $3 for the part, $97 for knowing where to put it. So, and think about this. We're a service economy in a lot of ways,
right.
and we've got people that want to pay for things. I don't do my own yard, all of those kinds of things. And I appreciate so much those folks that are out there in 105 degrees, 108 degrees, and they're working their tails off and just doing some really good things. And they have such great attitudes. I mean, I love those folks. Absolutely love them. And
there's the correct pathway is whatever you make the correct pathway to be, right? And your orientation of the pathway. Lencioni wrote a book called The 5 Functions of a Team, which is a good book, but I don't think it's his best one. His best one is kind of the ideal team player. And it talks about what you're looking for when you want to work with people, right?
Yeah.
And the 3 big things is humility, work ethic, and social emotional awareness. They could describe it as smartness, right? Are you humble? It's hard to teach humility. We love that.
Yes.
2, do you have work ethic and drive? Again, pretty hard to teach. It's something that you got to kind of work on. But I will say, like, for as a parent, I work on that with my little kids so that they at least have some functional work ethic. And the third one is, do you recognize how the stuff that comes out of your mouth is going to impact other people? To your point about civility always being in style.
Yeah.
Like, can you stay in that crucible of maintaining civility even when people don't agree with you?
Yeah. I've got one of my good news stories that I do, but I'm going to give a little quick version of it. I had a 7th grader at Kings Canyon that said, when do I get my check? And I said, what are you talking about? I said, well, my mom gets a check. When do I get a check? And it was such a crushing feeling that, work ethic was not something in her future. She didn't see it. And she was a very capable kid. I mean, very, very smart, bright, but she's already thinking, how do I live life without working? Work gives value to all of us.
Well, and meaning.
And meaning to life. Right. Yeah. I get to do things with kids and for kids. And you and I have learned a long time ago that relationships are everything.
Everything. Well, and I will say, too, one beautiful part. I mean, can you just agree? The superintendency is the dead straight best and dead straight worst job I've ever had in my life. Same time, right? 100%.
Oh, absolutely.
The best and the straight worst. But what's beautiful about it is it's never the same day twice.
No, exactly.
Right? And so you're going to get to experience new and different things, even some of which are painful, but also contribute to your experience base.
Yes.
And that makes life truly meaningful and worth living.
Yeah. I have a lot of folks that I've mentored over the years, and I tell them that the superintendency is like 1 foot in hot water, 1 in cold, averaging out pretty good, but hurting on both ends.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's very, very true.
But you get to direct, but you know what? One of the things that I think our audience doesn't understand about superintendents, we don't have as much authority as they like to assign us.
It's really hard. One of the things I think people don't really understand is the governance model, that how superintendencies work. People are like, fire that board member. Like, well, you can't fire them. They're elected, right? They don't work for, they got elected by the public.
Yes.
So the only way to release them is you have to recall them by the public. And the same thing, too, I think there's a erroneous set of beliefs that the board works at the behest of the superintendent, and it's actually the reverse. The weird part about being a superintendent is, imagine having 7 bosses that span the political continuum, and they don't agree on a whole heck of a lot, but you are responsible for making sure that all of them feel like they are heard and that they, they're not potted plants. They didn't get elected and they don't want to just sit there and be fed and watered and handled. And so they want to have things that they could be involved in. Many of them have political aspirations to do every other things. And so you're always looking for the Venn diagram of what helps them meet their own needs with what is good for kids. And sometimes those circles are not concentric.
They don't always join.
And they're on 7 different journeys at the same time. So navigating that can be very, very complex.
One of the things I tell our audience is we need more people to be running for boards.
Right.
We need more people to be interested in school site councils to participate, because as a principal or as a superintendent, as an administrator, I did a better job when I knew what people wanted, needed, were concerned about, and could find a way to accomplish that. I can't do everything for everybody, but there are a lot of things I can do if I know that's what you need.
Exactly. And I think maybe what's not understood is our orientation is to help first. Like,
yes.
People think, schools, if they, the hard part is everybody feels a different sense of ownership for schools, right? I don't think most people are not going to, have the physician and give them direction as to how they're going to go into but if they went to school, they feel like they have a pretty fair knowledge of that. So come and channel that in a productive way. Be involved in the processes that help schools move forward. And just work in collaboration with the people that you serve with locally, and you'll find that that's a really meaningful and worthwhile endeavor. It's another way to help kids.
Yeah, my mom was PTA president for the Fresno Unified when she was there. And she was in school. She attended as often as I did.
Right.
And what an amazing model for me to see. And I encourage parents, go to school, be on campus, see the folks, and and meet your teacher, meet your kid's teacher.
I'm thankful I didn't even know we had a district-wide PTA at one point, which is really good. We're excited for the first time. We've rekindled or maybe have started for the first time. You had it at the county. We've established a foundation for Fresno Unified Schools, which is good. Central had a foundation. The county has a foundation. Clovis does. Sanger does. I don't think we've really thought in terms of where raving fans of the district can congregate before. So I just am thinking, okay, there's a lot of people who want to help, but for lack of a venue. So now we've established a 501c3, and we're actually going to get going on the process of, and we've done really good without having a foundation. Last year we raised $165,000 in student scholarships for 70 plus kids. And we want to double that or triple that or get, and so, the narrative is, oh, Fresno Unified gets a lot of money because the kids are poor. And that's true. There's some truth to that reality.
Right.
But it doesn't mean you can spend it on the kind of things that it doesn't mean you can take taxpayer dollars and use it to send kids to college. It doesn't work that way.
There's so many rules attached to money that it used to drive me crazy.
It's hard. I mean, one of my claim to fame is I passed a bond without buying a single sign. I'm one of the only people that passed a school bond without ever purchasing a street sign. I'm not proud of that, but I guess I am, and I'm not proud of that simultaneously.
No,
right?
That's good.
But we need to be able to do that. We need people to know what is going on with the kids in Fresno Unified and take an active role. Yeah.
Well, we're going to continue our conversation. We're just so glad you've joined us today. Dr. Bob Nelson, Superintendent Fresno Unified, is with us, the third largest district in California.
Get it right.
And we're so glad you're listening to Powell to the People, where civility is always in style. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Powell to the People. Write it down.
Thanks.
People on the best talk in town.
Hey, we're so glad you've joined us for our last segment today with Dr. Bob Nelson, Superintendent Fresno Unified. Bob's one of my good friends in education because I know his heart. I know what he's doing with kids, and it's amazing. And I'll tell you, there's a lot to navigate that people don't understand. You've got unions, you've got parents, you've got teachers, you've got classified staff, you've got your own administrators.
Exactly right. Some people don't realize not only are we a $1.7 billion corporation, we're also the largest employer from Bakersfield to Sacramento. So that adds a great deal of complexity. There's 7 different labor unions that you described that we negotiate with on a regular and ongoing basis. You have interactivity with the other local. And it's kind of funny, right? That Superintendent O'Brien and Superintendent Jones and I would be close friends, like makes news in the Valley. Like, what is wrong with the universe that Fresno, Clovis, and Sanger getting along is going to make news for anybody? Yeah. But yeah, it's really, really complex. And I mean, we have a lot of the trappings of urbanity that are hard too. I mean, just dealing with the situations with the city and the complexities that the residents of the Valley face, that doesn't stop at the schoolhouse door. No. So we feed kids. We are mental health providers. We have clinics embedded. You could debate whether we should be involved in primary physical health, but it impacts whether or not kids come to school. So I can't ignore it. Yeah, right. Whether or not they're even available for learning. Yeah. So we're involved in a lot of things that goes, and I think one thing we realized in the pandemic that if a community schools ain't right, ain't nothing right.
No,
right.
Exactly.
I mean, and I think maybe that's why people put so much attention on what's going on with the schools, is because we play a much more comprehensive role than just simply educating kids.
Yeah. Well, everybody went to school, so everybody's an expert on education.
Yeah, it's amazing how much expertise there is in schooling in our system.
And I'm amazed at how little they actually know of how much stuff comes down from the state. You take a look at the Ed Code, 2 feet worth of Ed Code, single-spaced, double-sided. It's almost impossible to keep track of everything. And we have a variety of professional organizations that help us do that. So you get a board policy and then you get a board regulation.
Right.
And people just kind of think, well, why don't you just do this? Well, we've got some limitations on what we can do.
Sure. And I think, then you talk about, okay, so you're going to get your board policy that comes down from the state. Then there's an administrative regulation. And then the California School Boards Association puts their spin on what that looks like in terms of actual implementation.
Yes.
And then your board members that are closely affiliated with CSBA will have a closer affinity to that than those that won't.
Yes.
And you have to kind of navigate that political, so the superintendency is a lot like plate tectonics. You're floating on a constant sea of magma, and you're just trying to figure out what's gonna blow up like a volcano.
Trying not to get burned.
Yeah, right. Like, where are the earthquakes going to happen? But it's a choice opportunity to serve too.
It is.
And the pandemic has been horrific. There's no two ways about it. This has been one of the hardest times in education in the last several decades. Like, unless you were alive at the Spanish flu, I don't know that anybody.
There's nothing like it.
And the hard part is there's no playbook, right?
No.
And so we've made 68 plans and tabled 67 of them, right?
Yeah.
And I know that, and we understand that frustrates folks no end, because the lack of predictability has been gut-wrenching on behalf of all fronts, and it just leaves you open. And then, even the current mask mandate that we're going to kill masking statewide, but we're going to leave kids in it's just, I said publicly,
so hard.
Please just put me in front of a firing line. At least it'd be faster than getting
what's
bled
happening?
to death, one cut at a time.
Yeah.
And then to whom we are responsible has been a big thing since 2022. Do we follow statewide health guidelines? Do we follow
local,
federal? I mean, it's been, and that's been brutal too. I will say one thing that's been really beautiful for the Valley and its districts is that your successor, Superintendent Uvino, has done a good job of keeping the Valley districts together and making sure that we were all on the same page. Because honestly, if we implement those guidelines differently across the Valley, that creates no end of trouble.
32 districts in Fresno County.
Yeah, people don't even see that. Like you think, Fresno, Clovis, Sanger Central, Kings Canyon. Yeah, no. There's 32 districts in Fresno County alone and another 13, 14 in Madera.
And charter schools.
Right, and parochial schools.
Yes.
And what's great is actually we've all been in space together. We actually meet every Wednesday to kind of run through the latest that's going on and then try to figure out how are we going to navigate this for and in behalf and support one another while we're on this journey. And not everybody's in the same place politically, and not everybody's in the same place in their current reality of disease trajectory or whatever. But we've made a commitment to your point about civility that we're just going to stay linked together because we're better together than we are apart.
There were 80 or more on a Zoom once a week.
Exactly right.
For almost 2 years.
Right.
To try, what are you doing in your district? What are your thoughts? How do you make sure kids get the best they can possibly get? And you got to remember, teachers were not trained for distance learning. And yet on March 13th, I think was the date, because my birthday was March 13th. And I kind of remember that's when
March
COVID
13th,
just hit.
Friday, March 13th, 2020.
Yeah.
A day that will live in infamy.
Forever. And we're going to have 2 weeks and we'll be back.
Right.
And now all of a sudden we've had 2 years of this craziness that has been really hard. And yet I'm amazed at how much my grandkids learned during that time, even being home.
Well, I think we'd be well to acknowledge that it was not ideal for kids and that there is learning loss and that's real. And that's even politicized, like what you call that, learning lag or learning loss. I don't really care what you call it. I mean, we'll acknowledge that kids lost ground. And yet they learned some things that they would not have learned any other way as well.
Exactly.
And our teachers are way more resilient than they were. And I do think like going to the airport post 9/11 was never the same. I think the access to technology, for example, is probably not going to be ever the same post-pandemic. I mean, the reality of it is it's really, really hard and can be kind of gut-wrenching. And you see superintendents leaving the field left, right, and center because, I mean, the vast majority of us were not trained. I have all the professional training of a 6th grade teacher. To my knowledge, we have not got to the Egyptian history portion of the pandemic yet. When we get there, I'm going to knock it out of the park. But the reality is we get judged on our ability to run a statewide health agency.
Yes.
And some degree, we get judged on our ability to defy state mandate. Like, what we're judged on is really hard, and it's not really what we got into the profession for. But I will say I'm a lot more resilient than I ever imagined I would be. I'm a lot more resourceful than I ever imagined I would be. And God gives us trials to teach us to live at a higher degree. Yeah, right. I mean, that's true. I believe in the divinity of that.
I like to describe the superintendency as trying to keep 20 ping pong balls underwater at the same time. You keep pushing them down and one's popping up.
That's exactly right.
Know? But, we really do have a lot of good things going on, and you have a lot of things going on for parents if they want to be involved with their kids.
Yeah, we're richly blessed. We actually have a parent university organization that's right downtown on kind of where where Blackstone and Knees run in opposite, or Blackstone and I don't know, where the schools run, where the streets run in one-way streets, but right down by Susan B. Anthony Elementary. And you can go there, Parent University, if you want to be involved.
Abby.
Abby, thank you. Abby and Blackstone running parallel. Between them, there's a city block between them, and Fresno Parent University sits on one of these city blocks. And we do training for parents, but it's also a way for them to get actively involved. And they have a parent advisory committee that advises the district in totality. We have a advisory group for students with exceptionality that folks can get involved in. We have an advisory for English learners. Please get involved in that. As I said, we're starting up the foundation. We'd be encouraging people to be involved in that. We're affiliated with no end of nonprofits locally too. I mean, deeply connected to Better Blackstone and CASA, as I talked about. We have professionals that function at Marjorie Mason. We have a counselor in the Marjorie Mason Center. We have a social worker that's in the Marjorie Mason Center. There's just a million ways.
And for folks that don't know, that's moms with kids, and they've gotten out of their home.
People that have been subject to domestic violence and domestic abuse.
You do things with foster kids as well.
We do.
You got a big foster
we have a foster
program.
and homeless program. I mean, we have a number of foster. We have 600 plus foster youth that are there in Fresno Unified, and homeless youth is a factor for us too. We work with the Poverello House. We're trying to figure out how we can better support them. In the services that they provide to the kids that we serve in the community. There's no end, my dear friend Priscilla, Rescue the Children. We're connected with Breaking the Chains. We want to make sure our kids, we're connected with Lisa. We can't have kids on fentanyl, right? We have to be connected to the DA.
Yes.
I mean, there's no ends of ways. Whatever your personal interest is, there's a connection to the kids at Fresno Unified.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Through whatever interests you and what you feel to be important and valuable, there's probably some connective tissue somewhere.
Well, Bob, we're down to about 2.5 minutes left.
I apologize. I can fill 12 minutes like nobody's business.
But I was just going to ask you, what are the big challenges you're facing with teachers? Because I know trying to get a substitute is
it was
so
really hard. In the height of the Omicron variant, there was one Friday where we had 600 vacancies and we only have 358 subs. So the vast majority of that was either filled by
600 vacancies.
Yeah, on a Friday.
Wow.
We have a variant that spikes on Fridays. It's remarkable. I don't understand the medical technology around that, but remarkably it does.
I hear you.
Yeah, we had 600 vacancies. We had 358 subs, and we've really incentivized subs to come into the system. The rest of that was people like you or me going back to the classroom. Like, just people are not going to put the superintendent in a classroom per se, but I was at McLean doing morning yard duty, just making sure that, you just got to serve and try to, bloom where you're planted. And we're very blessed that the vast majority of our teachers would take kids from another classroom into their classroom, or they would cover by teaching on their prep. It's hard. We have labor relations conundrums, but for the most part, and we're kind of to a place where we're at stasis with that, and they're supportive, and our labor department, our labor unions know keeping our kids in school is the number one priority. They agree with that too. And so we're kind of like all hands on deck. That part's very affirming. And I will say one thing I'm maybe most proud about is you didn't hear the term Fresno Unified Family a lot before I sat in this role, and you hear about it every day now. And I wear that like a big source of pride. Like, our people stand together and they support and they sustain one another, and that really matters when things are tough.
Oh man, that's really fantastic. Well, I'll tell you folks, there are so many good things going on in Fresno Unified. So I would encourage you, when you read something, read deeply, and find out. But go to their website. They have so many opportunities on there for you to learn more about the district. And you also, you publish a video, your board meetings.
Yeah, we do. You can watch www.fresnounified.org. Check it out.
Yeah, I'd definitely tell you to check it out. But Bob, it's been a fantastic time. An hour goes by really quick in these settings.
Yeah, sorry, me talking through 12 minutes. I mean, we both know you have two superintendents get paid to do nothing but talk.
Well, listen, folks, we're so glad you've joined us today. We've been pleasured to have Dr. Bob Nelson, Superintendent of Fresno Unified, the third largest district in the state of California. A lot of challenges and a lot of successes. So, Bob, really appreciate you being with us today. I want to invite you back when you have something that you'd like to share.
Love and appreciate you and your wife. Thank you for your legacy of service.
Folks, you've been listening to Powell to the People, where civility is always in style. And don't forget, Good News with Larry Powell, Monday through Friday, 10 and 4. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
You are.